Nancy, you want to go in the middle of the room and talk about it?
No, I'd rather stay up here in the
Don't
front,
get
but
the
I'll try to holler. I'll try to holler voice. Y'all just do like this if you have trouble hearing me. Give me a little signal.
Miss Ella, if you will, you can pull up a chair to get a little closer. I know
I'm
you.
good.
Are you all right?
I'm good. I gotta hold the door. If I don't hold the door, y'all, that's why I sit so close. If I don't hold the door, the eventually starts to open. So that's why I do this.
Thank you, Ella. We appreciate you very much. State Representative Nancy Landry served District 31, which includes South Lafayette Parish and part of North Vermilion Parish. First elected 2008 special election, and re-elected to the second and third terms, 2011-15. Representative Landry serves as chair of the Education Committee. Representative Landry is a conservative Republican and a member of the House Republican Caucus. She serves on the House Republican Policy Committee as a member of the Acadiana Delegation, Rural Caucus, and the Legislative Women's Caucus. Nancy is pro-life, pro-business, pro-Second Amendment, and a strong advocate for parental choice in public education. After graduating from LSU and the LSU Law School in 1990, she worked for the online legal publishing company, Westlaw, before serving as judicial law clerk for the 15th Judicial District Family Court in private practice. Nancy's established an award-winning system that essentially provides reduced cost legal representation to families in crisis. She is the mother of 2 grown children and has done a great job, and she's certainly been a big friend of Concerned Citizens. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Caleb. Thank y'all, and just do like this if you have trouble hearing me. If I start losing my voice or anything, I'll try to project my voice as best I can. I'll try to remember to breathe from my diaphragm or whatever you call it.
Talk to us like you talk to your kids.
Yeah.
You don't want me to go there. So, first of all, I just want to thank you all for having me here tonight and allowing me to address you one last time before I term out and probably won't be invited back again. I've always enjoyed speaking with you. You are also well informed, and again, I just want to thank you for your civic engagement and for being such informed members and informed voters. And our democracy only works when we have people who stay informed like you do. I want to start off tonight before I get into the legislative issues and talk about the hot topics for the legislative session that starts April 8th. I want to start off with just a little personal story about school choice or educational freedom. And I want to speak about this not as a legislator, but just as a mom and a concerned citizen and someone who cares very deeply about our state. So I want to share with you how I came to care about education choice in Louisiana and why I believe school choice is a fundamental freedom that we should all fight for. I've lived in Louisiana almost my whole life. My mother's from New Orleans and my father grew up in Baton Rouge, although he's originally from a big Cajun family in Vermilion Parish. So my family has been here for over 250 years and I have really deep roots in this state. And I love my state, and that's why it troubles me so much that our education system lags so far behind other states. Poor education outcomes for our children mean that our kids, you can't hear me? Can you hear me?
No.
Okay. Means that our kids don't have the same opportunities for success that kids from other states have. I graduated from public schools, and my children graduated from public schools. I have 2 sons and 3 stepdaughters, so I've helped usher 5 kids through 11 different public schools in 3 different states. And so I've had the chance to compare things, and I've noticed remarkable differences among the school systems in the different states and among each individual school. And I'll tell you that no school is the same, and no school was perfect for any of my children. But there was some remarkable differences in Louisiana. We had a good experience for the most part. For example, my oldest son was in the gifted program and had some of the best and most inspiring teachers in the state. He graduated from Lafayette High. He went on to get degrees in math and computer science, and he's now a software engineer working for a big company. But we also had some not so great experiences along the way. And one of them was when my youngest son was in the 3rd grade. And without getting into all the details, I'll tell you that it was a terrible year and we were left with no options, even though we were zoned for an A-rated elementary school. He went from being a happy, eager, engaged kindergarten who won the math award to a discouraged and sad third grader who hated school and was no longer engaged in learning. He repeatedly told me that he was stupid in math and he didn't want to go to school anymore. And when I was advocating for my son, I encountered frustration after frustration and hit brick wall after brick wall. We tried meeting with the principal, we tried meeting with the teacher, we tried meeting with the gifted and talented coordinator, but we found that the school just wasn't responsive to my son's needs and not responsive to the parents' concerns either. And we had 9 sets of parents who were experiencing the same problems that year. Some of them took their kids out and put them in private school, but that wasn't an option for me. I couldn't afford to do that like some parents did. And I couldn't homeschool him because I was a single mom and I had to go to work. So I was left with no choices and I felt really, really stuck. And I had to watch my son wither for an entire year and it was very painful for both of us. He ended up with a lot of gaps in his math knowledge because of the situation in 3rd grade. But we made it through that year and eventually he was able to close the gaps that started in 3rd grade and continued for some time. And by high school, he was doing fine, and he went on to win the state calculus rally award in his senior year. And he's now doing great as a senior in college. He's also studying computer engineering and robotics, and he's about to graduate in May, and he has a job already lined up for after graduation. So our story has a happy ending, I'm happy to say. But the whole experience got me thinking about how unfair it was that we can choose healthcare providers and other services for our children, but unless we're wealthy, we have no choice in something that's just as important to our children's future success, and that's their education experience. And if I had this terrible experience in an A-rated school in a B-rated district, how many parents who were zoned for a D or F school were experiencing the same thing? And was it happening to them year after year or with multiple children in one year? And how do you recover from that? So I decided that I wanted to do something about it, and that's when I became an advocate for school choice. So when I talk about school choice to you, I just want you to know that for me, it's not just about policy, it's personal. And for decades, Louisiana has consistently ranked near the very bottom of all U.S. states in education outcomes, in spite of the fact that our per pupil spending is near the national average. And I'll say that again, our per pupil spending is ranked 26th in the nation. We do not underfund our K-12 education. We are at the national average. But Louisiana's poorest students are the worst served, and that results in a host of negative social consequences. These children are the most vulnerable and at the greatest risk, so it's particularly tragic. If you have kids, you know that every child is unique, and that parents know better than government bureaucrats what will meet the unique needs of your child. The ability of parents to choose the best educational option for their children, regardless of where they live, is no less important to me than the other core freedoms that we celebrate in our nation's founding documents and that define the laws and spirit of our nation. In America, we cherish our core freedoms: freedom of speech, freedom of association, and freedom of worship. And the Declaration of Independence details our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And what's more fundamental to that pursuit of happiness than the opportunity for success that comes with a quality education? Every child deserves an educational environment that meets his needs and gives him that opportunity. So I don't need to tell anyone in this room that there's an important discussion happening across the country right now about school choice and the many forms that it can take. And I like to call those the tools of school choice. You have tax credits, you have scholarships, or also called vouchers, charter schools, inter-district choice like we have in Lafayette Parish. We have magnet schools and education savings accounts, which you'll be hearing more about in the future. And that's all important, and I'm happy to discuss the mechanics of some of these policies at another time if you'll have me back after I'm out of office. But I'm asking you today just to open your minds to school choice. if we assume that the way we've always done something in the past is the best way going forward, we create a roadblock to finding a better way. We have a choice when it comes to every other service that we secure for our children, even other phases of their education. We have choices for their pre-K programs. We have choices for their higher ed programs. So why do we let government bureaucrats choose for us when it comes to our children's kindergarten through 12th grade education? In almost all instances, competition improves quality and lowers cost. So I just, wanted to tell you that before I, term out and leave and not have the opportunity to talk to you again. I just want you to keep an open mind about school choice. When you hear people discussing it in the future, and you will hear there's going to be just a national debate continuing about it, that it's something that we've always done it one way, but it's maybe not the best way, and we should maybe consider a different way going forward. So now I'm going to put my legislative hat back on and talk about some of the hot topics before Senator Cortez talks to you about his topic. But just briefly, we have some things that we anticipate will be coming up in this session. The session starts April 8th, and it is a fiscal session, so it's considered a shorter session. It's only 45 days instead of 65 days. And we're limited in the number of non-fiscal bills that we can file. But we all know, and we've heard in the news, that teacher pay raises are going to be one of the big hot topics of this session. And Bessie has already sent over their proposal for the minimum foundation program, which is how we fund public education in Louisiana. And they've included in there a $1,000 raise for teachers and a $500 raise for support personnel. And they also included a 1.375% across the board increase in just the per pupil funding.
I'm sorry, I'm a 30-year retired teacher. When was the last time
They don't allow questions in the middle, so you can come, you'll have to come up after.
We're taking this, it'll be a question time, so but we want to record, so it's all right. Okay, so you keep that question and you'll be up in a minute.
So we don't anticipate any opposition to the teacher pay raise. I literally haven't heard anybody that has opposed to them getting a $1,000 raise. If anything, we've heard that they deserve more than that, because it's been a long time since they've had a raise, and they work really hard, and we want them to be at the Southern Regional average at least. And they're not at the Southern Regional average. Only 12 districts are paying our teachers at the Southern Regional average. And that's in spite of the fact that we fund at the national average in per pupil spending. So we send that money in a block grant to the districts, and the districts are not prioritizing teacher pay. They're not making teacher pay a priority. Only, I think, 12 districts are at the Southern Regional average. So we anticipate that there will be enough to fund the teacher pay raise, but the additional 1.375 is another $39 million, and we just don't know if we're going to have enough money to include, in addition to a teacher pay raise and support personnel pay raise, and also an across-the-board increase at 1.375. But we'll know more when REC meets again in April and we know what the budget is. The next thing that we think is going to be a hot topic in the upcoming session is an effort to legalize sports betting. Mississippi did this last year, as some of you may know, and so there's going to be an effort to, I think, to put that on the ballot and let it be local option, where you can actually bet on sports games, and then there'll be an effort also to tax the revenue from that and use that for something. So we'll see. I haven't seen the bills yet. It's still very early, and we haven't seen all the bills that have been filed yet. We're also going to see some laws enacted, or some legislation dealing with hemp. Hemp is like a marijuana plant, but it doesn't have the THC, or it has drastically reduced THC, which is the part of the marijuana plant that gets you high. So hemp is like a marijuana plant that doesn't get you high, And it has a lot of industrial purposes. It's used to make fabric and rope and all kinds of things. But also it's been used to get the CBD oil out of it, which has some mild analgesic properties and has been shown to be effective in treating some ailments. And so other farmers around the country are already growing hemp, and they're selling CBD oil. It's legal to purchase it. You can get it on the internet. And our farmers are now saying, we want to get in this, up and coming industry, and we want to be a part of it. And there was a federal bill passed this past year that authorized states to do this, but you have to have some legislation to enable it. So we're going to see that legislation from Chairman of the Ag Committee, I think, and we're going to have probably some lively debate around that. And you'll see farmers on the side of hippies, together lobbying for the same thing. It'll be really interesting. We're also expecting a package of tort reform bills. We have the highest car insurance in the nation, and so Representative Kirk Talbot is bringing some bills to try to address that and try to reduce our car insurance rate by reforming some of our tort laws. The governor has promised that we're going to see again in the minimum wage and equal pay bills, which don't really go anywhere in the legislature, and we'll see if they get anywhere this year. But we have our minimum wage is the same as the federal minimum wage, and the equal pay laws that usually come out are usually packed with provisions for attorney's fees that really scares some people off, and they don't want to create an incentive for people to sue businesses. And we have a federal equal pay law that we can rely on, so those usually don't get feet, but we'll see. We also anticipate some legislation to regulate the scooters that you've seen around town. They sort of came in and just dumped them around the town, and there's no safety rules or regulations. We don't know if kids should be using them or if helmets should be worn, or what sort of regulations should we have. So we're going to see some either legislation that allows local government to regulate that, or some regulation at the state level. And we're going to have the usual fight over the budget. This year, if you've been following it in the news, the Revenue Estimating Conference has met, and they have to have a unanimous vote on the revenue that they recognize, and they haven't had a unanimous vote since June. So there's a dispute about whether to recognize the surplus and how much of the surplus to recognize. And we're going to probably have another REC meeting in April, and we'll have a better idea then of what revenue we'll have available. But the governor has, instead of sending us an executive budget as he's required to do by the Constitution, he sent us what he's calling a proposed budget. And it has a sort of made-up number in there of $134 million that nobody seems to know where that number came from. And so it's kind of a different year because of that. We don't really know what to do with this proposed budget as opposed to an executive budget, and where this number came from, and whether to come up with our own or whatever. So we're gonna have some lively discussion around that as well. And we're also going to have some legislation to create a centralized tax collection agency that instead of remitting, for businesses right now have to remit to 70 different agencies, and we have to have a centralized tax collection in order for us to qualify to collect internet sales tax. We've been relying on consumers to voluntarily remit those taxes, and as you might imagine, they're not very reliable and they don't remit. And so we estimate that we've been leaving between $250 million and $400 million on the table because we haven't been collecting it. And the Supreme Court ruled last year that you can collect it. You don't have to have a brick and mortar store in the state in order to collect from the businesses. But you do have to have a way to make it easy for businesses to do it by having a centralized place to remit. So we're going to see legislation on that again as well. We're also going to see something that will make the homestead exemption a local option instead of a state law. That would, right now the homestead exemption is on the first $75,000 value of your home, and there's going to be some legislation to allow locals to adjust that. Some want to raise it, some want to lower it, some want it to be a rolling exemption, and it's a pretty sacred cow in Louisiana, so I don't know if it'll get any legs, but we'll see. But we think we're going to see legislation on that. Steve Carter, I think, is also, he's a representative from Baton Rouge. He's also going to be bringing back his gasoline tax proposal. Last year it was 16 cents, was it? I can't remember. But he wants to dedicate the funds from a gasoline tax to infrastructure and roads, and I think he's bringing that back again this year. And I've also seen some proposals to reform our income tax structure and make it a flat tax and eliminate deductions, and there's various plans to do that. So those are the things that we think are going to be the hot topics, and I'm sure there'll be more than that. It's a lot of people's last session before they term out, and even though we have a limit of 5 bills, everybody's kind of rushing to get done what they've always wanted to do, and it's their last year. So in elections, usually people say, oh, it's going to be a boring session and nobody's going to bring anything controversial, but we really don't think that's going to be the case this year because we have so many term-limited legislators who aren't up for election, and so we do think there'll be some controversial things. So. And I don't know if you want Central Cortez to go next and then do questions, or you want me to take questions first?
Do you want to take questions now? I mean, it'd be fresh in your mind.
Sure. Okay. So thank y'all so much, and I'll take any questions now. So.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, actually, I was not.
Do you want her to come
Fresh was.
Oh, come on now.
That mic would work better if you hear it run.
I've been a teacher for 30 years, so y'all should hear me pretty well. I'm used to speaking out. My question was not so much about whether retirees will get anything. I'm sure we won't. My question was actually how long has it been since an actual pay raise was given by the state, and that in itself should give you a lot of leverage, because it's been at least 15 years or so.
I don't think, when was it 10 years ago? I don't
Probably the
remember.
last state mandated.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking
But
about.
Yeah, we've given bonuses. We gave a $44 million bonus,
And that
but it
went-
wasn't in the
yeah.
MFP, so it didn't have to recur, so it recurred for 3 years. And
I
then
can
it
tell
was
you
cut.
where a lot of that money per pupil is going. Not to pupils, not to teachers. But my second question, actually, if this person wants to dedicate money to some particular thing, didn't we dedicate the money from the lottery to education?
Some of it.
I think originally it was 100% of it.
Yeah.
I wasn't
So
there
they
when they
sold it.
passed the lottery, but we do get money from gaming and from the lottery that is dedicated to education. And we allocate it every year. It's not that much. It's not
No,
as much as
it's-
people
it's a
thought. I
whole
think when
lot-
they voted on it, but it's still.
It's a whole lot less than was promised when the bill was passed.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say here. They
You're talking about the
dedicated,
gaming revenue that would be.
well, I'm
I mean,
saying, we've
sports
got a
betting.
history in this state of dedicating to something and then the next 5 minutes,
Yeah.
it's undedicated for whatever reason. And
we
they've
have-
done that with education and the lottery. Why don't, is there a way to get legislation that says, look, let's fulfill the promise we made originally to these people?
We don't make enough from gaming or the lottery to fund education. Education is actually the
Anything
biggest
would
single
help.
item in our budget.
Anything.
We spend, the state portion of education funding for K through 12 is $3.7 billion, and there's another $3.5 to $7 billion from local revenue, and then we get about $1 billion from the feds. And so there's just not anywhere near that amount of money coming from gaming or the lottery combined that we could dedicate and fully fund education. There is
Oh, I don't expect full
some
fund.
millions that come from it. I'm not exactly sure how much it is, but we do allocate it every year, and we do get it you know, dedications are a double-edged sword. I mean, you have the money dedicated to a specific thing that's a priority one year, but it may not be a priority in 5 years, and then you're stuck with that dedication. And so I'm in favor of whenever we have a dedication that we should revisit it at least every couple of years and make sure that it's still a priority for the state. So we have dedications that are from the 20s and 30s, and we don't even know if it's still a good idea to continue to do that. We just don't revisit it often enough. And it's something we need to look at. So, I mean, people like them because it makes sure that the money is being spent where they voted on it to be spent, but it's not always a great thing when your priorities change and that's no longer a priority for the state. Mr. Green?
Mr. Queen, mercy. Thank you, State Representative Nancy Landry.
You're welcome.
Since we're being technical. Good evening, my name is Ray Green. It's been a while. I had my second heart procedure a week ago, be a week ago tomorrow. I've lost about 10 pounds, seemingly all in my voice. But you're going to hear me because I have something to say. And I have a couple of questions. So I'm going to ask the questions and then I have a comment. Question number one. I'll ask both of you.
Okay.
What is the purpose in resolutions, since they do not have the force of law? To me, they're just a waste of time. Well, what's the point in the resolutions? Because I have a city resolution and a state resolution, which you voted for. It doesn't mean do diddly squat.
Some of them actually do have the force of law, like the minimum foundation program, which the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education sends over their proposed budget for funding the K through 12 education and their formula for funding it, and it is presented to the legislature in the form of a resolution, which we then adopt, and we're required by the Constitution to then fund. And so that one really does have the force of law, but some of them are just an expression of our opinions or beliefs, or it's a way to express something without actually doing the heavy lift of passing a bill, because sometimes you just can't get the votes, and it's a good way to start a conversation and start people talking about it and getting the members informed about an issue, so when it comes up for a vote the next year, they go, oh yeah, I remember that, and they'll vote on it. Because their default is to vote no if they don't understand what the issue is.
I understand, no offense, but I'm not very smart, so I have to ask. Second question, how can a citizen defend ourselves against the power of the darn lobbyists?
So anybody can be a lobbyist, and everybody has the right to lobby. And so we have a lot of citizen lobbyists who come there, and they're not being paid by anyone. They band together and they come to the Capitol, sometimes in huge force, all wearing the same T-shirts, and they really do get legislators' attentions. They send notes to their legislators and talk to them and tell them their position for or against bills. And members actually listen to their constituents more than they listen to anyone else. And people don't believe that. The public perception is that we listen to lobbyists more. But we only listen to lobbyists because they're telling us what our constituents have told them. They've done surveys, or they know, they've taken the pulse of something. So we really do listen to our constituents more than anyone. Everyone knows, when someone calls you from your district and they are someone who votes, that you pay attention to that person as your boss. And so you might not always be able to vote the way they want you to vote, because of course you're going to have people on both sides of an issue. But, you as constituents who vote are more powerful than any lobbyists. And it's true. It's not a popular belief, but it actually is true.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I believe in giving credit where credit is due, especially to State Representative Nancy Landry and State Senator Paige Cortez, especially Nancy Landry in helping get a law passed requiring future government buildings to have 5% of the seating capacity with chairs with arms. That's the first start. We're still working on the second part for public accommodations. Second, State Senator Paige Cortez deserves a big round of applause for getting the law passed requiring all Lafayette senior high school students to pass the same quiz on the Constitution that immigrants have to pass in order to graduate, in order to become citizens.
That's a little
So I thank Paige Cortez.
I was a social studies teacher, so I salute that, 150%.
We went to Baton Rouge and gave them hell, didn't we, Paige? Excuse me, Senator.
In her committee? That's right. Well, I'm an old civics teacher too, so it was very important.
Were you a coach?
Okay. Thirdly, this brings me to my comment. Recently, I don't know how many of you saw it, Louisiana, this is so sad, Louisiana ranks dead last in citizenship know-how. Woodrow Wilson National Fellowship Foundation conducted its national survey. Only 27% of people in Louisiana earned a passing grade on the Constitution. So what I'm proposing, and I hope I can get some help, hint, hint, is that we can get some help in the legislature. People, it defies common sense to demand more education, training, experience, even a license to cut somebody's darn toenails or to drive a garbage truck than it does to become an elected or appointed official. That time has passed, in my opinion, and in my opinion, we should make it one of the qualifications for every single legislator to pass the same quiz on the Constitution that immigrants have to pass in order to be a United States citizen. Now, I'm going to take a quick poll. How many of you agree? Raise your hand. And what does that tell you, legislators? Okay.
Every student should have it.
And you can both individually answer questions, and I appreciate your diligence. And again, thank you, Paige.
You will. I was going to talk about a lot of that stuff at the end. I still might.
Okay.
Go ahead, Glover, you have a question?
Did you have a question?
Yeah.
Whoever told you that senior citizens have the golden age is full of it.
It's iron. It's iron. It rusts.
that.
It rusts like everything.
Ms. Landry, in your speech, you had 7 different items you kind of ran through quickly.
Oh, the hot topics, yeah.
One I kind of want to focus on is sports betting.
Okay.
You said Mississippi voted it in. If Mississippi goes over a cliff, do we need to go over a cliff? Lots of states that have sports betting, they have mafia, they have organized crime. Just comes in with it. Like y'all got a call.
You think we don't?
And the best thing I heard you talk about was
Makes it more.
teacher raises. Bless our teachers they work hard. And they get dumped on by parents, by other teachers, and politics. They need to have some money to fight this off. Thank you.
Thank you. I was just telling you about the hot topics that were coming up. I wasn't saying that I supported all those bills. So I haven't heard the debate yet on sports betting. I would, kind of be inclined to not support it at this point. But, I never like to commit one way or the other until I actually hear both sides of the issue. And I haven't really heard anything yet about it, and I'd like to see what's happened in Mississippi. But I think for sure it will be something that will be put to a vote, and people will get to decide, and it will probably be a local option like we did for the fantasy sports betting last year. So I wasn't saying I support it, I'm just telling you what hot topics will be coming up. So I think that was the last. You didn't have another question.
I have a question.
Okay.
Thank you, Representative Landry, for coming. Mike, you mentioned the equal pay bill. I definitely think that there needs to be equal pay. Women are always and have been, as you well know, because you worked in the real world before you became a legislator.
Still work in the real world.
Anyway, I think that definitely, but as far as the federal minimum wage, because the state of Louisiana is amongst 5 states in this country that does not have a minimum wage, we adopt the federal. Are you in support of the unleash the ban and let the local governments generate the wages? Because I mean, Shreveport to New Orleans is a big disparity in cost of living. So why, or at least establish a fair minimum wage across the board?
Thanks, that's a great question, and no, I'm not in favor of having locals establish a minimum wage. I think it would create havoc in the state and a lot of uncertainty for businesses. And so I think businesses want certainty. They want to know what to expect when they start their business in a certain area and not have to worry about the locals coming in. What we've seen with local ITEP control is that groups from out of state who are not even citizens in our state have come in and are exerting a lot of pressure on local government officials on these votes. And they're trying to advance an agenda that is, not even what the popular vote in Louisiana, what the people in Louisiana want. These are out-of-state interest groups that are funded from, big, giant billionaire groups. And so, no, I'm not in favor of that. I do, think that the market will create a wage for people, and that if, there's a shortage of workers, that businesses will pay them more, and that the market should set the wage. And I think we've seen that, and, a lot of businesses in Louisiana have increased wages when they need workers. We see it with welders right now. The wages are going up for welders because there's a shortage of welders. And I think that we should let the market take care of it. We've seen some negative results in other states where they've set a high minimum wage, and businesses have had to lay people off. They are not providing jobs for students anymore, and they're cutting the hours of the workers that they have, and or going to automated like robotic waiters and stuff instead of having to pay these high minimum wages. So I don't support that. And the equal pay, I voted for some of the equal pay bills that we have. I've not voted for others. I think the federal law protects us, and so it is against the law to not pay women the same amount as men already in Louisiana, and they're protected, and you can sue and get back wages. I don't like the bills that create an incentive for lawyers to put up billboards and say, sue your employer, and forcing businesses to then settle even though they're not guilty of anything, because I think it just drives up the cost of doing business in Louisiana and sends businesses packing to other states. We've seen that in the last few years. We've had businesses in an exodus going to Texas, and we've had a not very good business climate here for the past few years, and I think that would just send another message that we're not open for business. So, thank you.
Just one question tonight, y'all. I think it's great that y'all are going to consider giving a $1,000 raise to the teachers through the MFP fund, and it was proposed $500 for the support staff. Is there any way that y'all can make it $1,000 for both teachers and support staff? I mean, the support staff are the ones that make the least amount of money. They're the last ones to get a raise. Why wouldn't they? It doesn't matter if they haven't had the same education as teachers. They are just as important as teachers to me, because without janitors, cafeteria workers, the teachers would have a hard time doing their job in school. I think they're all important, and they have not gotten a raise. Teachers have gotten a raise sooner than they have gotten. It's time that they get a raise also. And I was just asking if there's any way that y'all can make that an even $1,000 across the board for teachers and support staff. Thank you.
I don't think that'll happen because of just the budget constraints that we have, and our teachers we're trying to find out whether our support workers are at a regional average or not. We're having trouble finding any state that keeps records of that and ranks it. But we are still suffering. Our economy is still depressed in this area, and there are people still willing to take those jobs. So there's not a shortage of people in most of those jobs, whereas teachers, we are having a shortage in some areas, finding good teachers and keeping teachers in the job. And so we want to incentivize teachers to enter the profession and to stay in the profession. What I'd like to see is us give even a bigger bump to teachers who are in shortage areas like special ed and math and science teachers that we desperately need in some areas. And so so I think there would be more support for something like that, where we would pay shortage area teachers an extra bump before people would agree to give support workers another bump up. I think the priority is going to be on teachers, because we really want to make sure that we have teachers entering the profession and staying in the profession. So we want to really show commitment to them. So, and we just don't have the funds to do 1,000 for, I think that would be another 40 million, 42 million. All right, thanks everyone. I really appreciate it. I've enjoyed talking to you over the year. It's been a great group, and I always enjoy coming to talk to you.
What did you say with the applause? I couldn't hear a word.
I said thank you so much. You've always been a great group for me to talk to, and I always enjoy talking to you over the years that I've been in office, and I'll miss you guys. So thank you again.
Thank you. I couldn't hear you.
I'm going to introduce my friend Senator Paige Cortez. Senator Paige Cortez currently serves Senate District 23. He was unopposed in the October 2011 election for this Senate seat and was re-elected with 84% of the vote in 2015. He was first elected to public office in October of 2007 as a state representative. Senator Cortez currently serves on the following committees. He's chairman of the Senate Transportation Committee. He's on Commerce, Consumer Protection and International Affairs Committee, and Retirement Committee. He's also served on the Funding Review Panel, Louisiana High School Athletic Association Executive Task Force, and the Lafayette Parish French Immersion Task Force. He's a member of the Acadiana and Republican delegations. Senator Cortez is a successful small businessman. He's co-owner and operator of Lazy Boy Furniture Galleries and Sofas and Chairs in Lafayette. Before entering the business world, he was a teacher and a coach for several years. He's married to Angela Stoma Cortez, and they have 2 children, Matthew and Maria. My friend since the 9th grade, Senator Paige Cortez.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here as well. She did mention that I was a teacher, and I taught right there at Lafayette High School, where both of us went to high school, and I grew up at the exact opposite end of this street. So I don't know how many people remember Veyron's when he was right here and Mr. Al's Barbershop, but I rode my bike to Mr. Al's Barbershop to get my hair cut from the time I could ride a bike, and I used to come buy loaves of bread. And I have a great story that I love to tell about that. Now, I was born in 1961, so I'll be 58 in August. And I was 7 years old, and I rode my bike to get a loaf of bread right there, and I walked out, and I was, you know, you just go get on your bicycle. We didn't have to lock it back in those days in the 1969 or 70. And I found a $20 bill on the ground. Now, you know how much I thought that was? And I went home so fast, I dropped the bread on the way home to show my mom the $20 bill, which allowed me to buy another loaf of bread for about 40 cents probably. But I didn't know who to give it to. It wasn't mine, but anyway, I have a great memory of this coolie too. We grew up, you know, little boys playing coolies, you know, so great coolie.
Girls played in them too.
But Nancy kind of covered a lot of the stuff, so I'm gonna tell you that. I'll give you a little more background. My dad still lives down at the other end of the street. He's 85 years old. He's a retired educator, 33 years in education. He's now been retired for right at about 30 years. So he's been retired for as long as he practically was teaching and principal, assistant principal, and eventually at the central office. My mother was a school secretary. So my sister's a retired school teacher. My brother teaches school in Atlanta. My grandmother, my dad's mother, was a school teacher, and guess what? He had 4 siblings. 3 were teachers, 1 was a school bus driver. So if there's anybody that understands what support and teachers deserve and where they come from, my family was in the school system literally back generations. And so my grandfather in Lafourche Parish, my dad was from Lafourche Parish, he drove a bus and he was a school board member. And if you come to my Senate office, as Mr. Green has done, on the wall, every time we get elected, it says, was duly elected to, and it puts your position, and it's signed by the governor. And it's a proclamation. He was a 2-term school board member, 1 signed by Huey Long, and 1 signed by O.K. Allen. So I have the 2 documents on the wall. The Huey Long's the original, the O.K.'s just a copy. My dad won that in a coin flip with his sister. So Nancy talked a little bit about some of the issues and the fiscal issues that are going to come up. This is the short session. We call it the short session in the odd years and the long session in even years. It's short because we deal primarily with fiscal issues, but you are allowed, each legislator, we have 144, to bring 5 non-fiscal bills. We call them general bills. Not everybody brings 5, but you have that number. You can bring local bills that don't count against the 5. That means it deals strictly with your parish or with your city, and the law only affects them. You can bring retirement bills, and you can bring constitutional amendments. Constitutional amendments, of course, require 2/3 of the vote of both houses and a vote of the people on a ballot down the road in order to become part of the Constitution, but we can bring those as well. So Nancy hit on most of the things that I was going to hit on with regards to the upcoming issues. I will mention a couple that I don't think she covered, and if you heard it, there is a bill that's going to raise the minimum age to 21 for the sale, purchase, and possession of tobacco products. And I think that seems pretty easy to wrap your brains around because it's being brought by the chairman of the Health and Welfare Committee. So there is a direct correlation between early smoking and health outcomes, and then the cost of health outcomes and how much it costs to deal with that from the state. But it's not going to be that easy. I don't know that it'll be that easy to pass because you have all of the suppliers and the chains and the stores that make revenue off of selling cigarettes and vapes and all of the tobacco products that go with it. I remember, again, tell a quick story, coming down here to buy a 6-pack of beer at Veron's, in 1972, I was 11 years old. I don't think they told me I couldn't do it, just brought it back home to my dad, it wasn't for me. And they kind of knew that, but we got strict over the years about that, and I think the same debate's going to come up. You mean my son can't go in there and buy me a pack of cigarettes? If he's 18 years old, he can go fight and war and come back, but he can't buy a cigarette, and so we're going to have those debates. That'll be an interesting one. There's another one to phase out the corporate franchise tax over 5 years. Now, if you are in business, I'm sure you probably go, that would be tremendous, just get rid of the franchise tax. Y'all know the corporate franchise tax basically says, it's a tax that says you're going to utilize services, you're going to utilize fire services, police services, you're going to utilize the highways. We need some money out of you to just say you're going to be a good member of the good corporate entity. But Representative Villiers from Eunice has that bill, and he's trying to phase it out over a period of time because you have to deal with the budget drops over the years, and you will have to shrink government, but you're going to have some services that will go away. So I think I don't know how that will come out. As you all know, again, old civics teacher, all bills that raise revenue start in the House. They can't start in the Senate. All bills that spend money start in the House. They can't start in the Senate. So all these bills, a tremendous amount of bills start on the House side in a fiscal session because that's where all the fiscal issues have to start. Representative Landry talked about the reduction, about the insurance bills that are coming. We all hear about the car insurance. Representative Talbot is the chairman of the Insurance Committee. And he's got an omnibus bill. That means it's got all of the issues wrapped into one. It deals with, in some cases, these billboards, sue if you've been in a car accident, sue, okay? So the insurance companies on the one side are saying, if we quit getting sued, we wouldn't have to pay out so much and then we would be able to lower premiums, okay? The lawyers on the other side are saying, if your people wouldn't be at fault, you wouldn't have to pay. Well, there's this thing called jury trial thresholds. Louisiana's jury trial threshold is $50,000. That means if it's under $50,000, a judge can hear the case. But if it's over $50,000, if you're the litigant, if you're being sued, or not the litigant, you're the defendant, you can say, I want to go in front of a jury and let them hear my case. It's going to have a lot of debate. People argue that the reason Louisiana has higher insurance rates is because a lot of lawyers will sue for $49,999, go in front of their friend the judge, get the $49,999 and go about their business. I don't know if there's any actual statistical analysis to prove that, if it's objective. That's the debate. We're going to have that debate. But the bill that Representative Talbot's bringing is saying, hey, if we make the lawyers stop doing that, you got to lower your insurance premiums. Because you're telling us that's the cause. Well, the insurance guys are, wait, you don't want to tell me I'm running my business, though. Well, no, you want to not be sued, but you also want to charge, Mr. and Mrs., auto policy the same rate. Well, so that's going to be a big debate. I think that's going to be some interesting ones. Representative Landry is the chairman of the House Education Committee. I know you all know that, and she's passionate about education. And when you get into the legislature, that's sort of what happens. You get guided to your committees, and you become sort of interested in that topic, because you can't know everything about everything. So I serve as the Senate Transportation and Public Works Chairman. So for the last 3 years, I've been dealing with a lot of transportation issues. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and then I'm going to kind of give you an overview of kind of politics going forward, and then answer some questions. So everybody, wants better transportation. And what I love about the transportation issue is transportation is not Republican and it's not Democrat. Transportation is used by everybody. And so everybody wants better roads and better bridges. But then how do we fund them? That's the fundamental question. How do we fund them? And so from a pure practical perspective, we fund everything in transportation through the gasoline and special fuels tax. That's the only monies they get. Now, if you go to the pump and you pump a gallon of gas, at the rack, meaning back at Macro Oil, when it got onto the truck to come over here, somebody paid that tax. They paid 18 cents in a federal transportation trust fund tax. They paid 16 cents in a state transportation trust fund tax, and they paid 4 more cents in a state timed, which is transportation infrastructure for economic model for economic development, which built a lot of the highways back in the early 90s. Late 80s it was passed, early 90s they built them. And so that 4 pennies goes to pay for those bonds. The 16 cents is the same number that we've been paying since the 1980s. So, just to give you an example, there's more electric cars on the road, there's more fuel-efficient cars on the road, so people are driving, have better fuel efficiency, so there's almost less gallons being bought, although there are actually more because we're more people today, and we have a few more cars. But per car, we're more fuel efficient, and so when the price of gas goes up and down, your tax doesn't change. So when the price of fuel is $1.50 a gallon, you're still paying the same 38 cents in taxes. It was paid at the rack. They just put it into the price at the pump. When the price goes up to $4, your taxes didn't go up. Still the same 38 cents. So what has been done in the legislature to try to help with infrastructure? Representative Landry talked about the fuel tax. About 30 states have passed a fuel tax over the last 5 years. We have not. It's come to the, has it got to the House floor? It goes to committee. I don't know that it's ever got out of the House Committee, House Ways and Means Committee. And so, so what are the things we've done other than that? Well, last year, you probably will remember, there was a constitutional amendment that removed the use of the money in the Transportation Trust Fund for state police for traffic enforcement. So I had passed that bill 2 years ago, and we had to get 2/3 vote of the House and 2/3 vote of the Senate, and you all got to vote on it at the polls. What was the effect of that? The fuel tax dollars that are, again, paid at the rack goes into this transportation trust fund, and it was used for certain things. Well, during the years when the, I'm going to call it state general fund, when your sales tax was down and your income tax was down, they would go into that fund, you talked about dedicated funds, they would go into that fund and say, well, we need to pay for state police. Let's pull 80 million out of that and give it to state police and call it, you know, for safety. So what that did is it ensured that money going in there is no longer going to go to that. And you all voted to protect that. Make that trust fund build roads and bridges and not pay for state police anymore. The second thing we did, and Representative Major Tebow, who left and is now the parish president in Point Competent Parish, he passed a constitutional amendment that said we're going to create a second fund, a sub-fund of the Transportation Trust Fund. And any new dollars we raise, if you pass a fuel tax, it's going to go into sub-fund, and none of that can be used for salaries, or benefits, or anything. It can only be used for construction. So I think that's a good, if you do vote for a fuel tax, you have now the confidence to know that it's not going to state police, and it's going into that fund, and it's going to be used to build some roads. So that's kind of what we've done on the transportation side over the last couple of years. What's the other options? Well, there's a lot of talk about tolls. We call them public-private partnerships. The tolling company comes in and says, I got $3 billion that I can spend, I need to spend it, but I want to make my money back. I'll build the bridge for you, the Calcasieu River, the Lake Charles Bridge is an example. We'll build it for you. It's going to be a nice brand new bridge. But we're going to put a toll on both sides of it. And we're going to pay ourselves back over the next 40 years. And we're going to make some money off of it, but we're going to maintain it. And then at the end of 40 years, Louisiana, it's yours. You can do what you want with it. So is that a good model? It's a user fee. So some people would argue, every time we voted for a fuel tax, y'all took that money and spent it in Monroe, and I'm paying for it in Lafayette. But if you built it across the Calcasieu River, you're not paying for it unless you cross the Calcasieu River. If you live in Baton Rouge, and you don't ever cross into Texas, you're never going to pay for that bridge. The people from Texas will pay for it, which we don't do good. Florida, you go to Destin, you cross the Mid-Bay Bridge, people from Louisiana, Alabama, Tennessee, they all pay for the Mid-Bay Bridge. Texas, you cross over to Texas, you want to go up to the Woodlands, you're paying for that road. People from Louisiana, Texans are not, I mean, certainly they're paying for it, they're paying their share, but it's a user fee. So this public-private partnership is kind of taken off. We've only got one public-private partnership right now, and it's going down to Fouchon. If you've been down LA1 to Grand Isle, it's the only one we have. We don't count the one across the Pontchartrain. That's been there too long. That was just called Toll Road back in the day. So the other things we did. We changed our capital outlay. The House has had a number of bills to change the way we do capital outlay. Now we have the budget. Y'all know that. That's the state expenditures. But then we have a second bill that's called capital outlay. And that's the multi-year project bill. Well, there's a lot of projects in there that go to pay for local projects. Well, the House over the last, and even when I was there, made concerted efforts to say, we don't want to pay for locals anymore. I mean, we will, but because some of them can't afford it, but we need to limit that. And we need to pay for state roads, and we need to pay for state buildings, and concentrate on paying with state dollars, state entities. So that's been a reform. And then one of the things that's going to be interesting that's going to come up this year is going to be the sales tax. You remember we used to pay 4% sales tax, and then we went to 5%, and then we came back down to 4.45 state sales tax? Well, there's a bill that's coming in to say we want to go back to 4 cents sales tax, but not really take the 0.45, but each year over the next 3 years take 0.15, 0.30, and then 0.45, and just not spend it on regular recurring, put it in the Transportation Trust Fund and build some good roads. So that way you wouldn't pay a dime more than you're paying now, but you'd get some better roads, and while we would have to cut some things. We would have to cut some state government. I don't know what that would be. That's a debate for another day. That's called the appropriations bill. But I don't know if it'll get any traction up, but that's one that's going to come up. So with that, that's my policy talk about transportation. So now I'm going to get into what I'm going to call my quick political overview, and then I'll take questions, if that's okay. So the political overview is, in my mind, the 30,000-foot view. In 1995, the legislature passed something called term limits. And so they said, we don't think that we don't think you should be able to come here and be elected for life. Now, sheriffs can do that, Congress can do that. Judges, although judges now have an age which they're forced them to retire. The argument against term limits was, you're always up against a term limit. The voters can throw you out at any election. The reason for term limits was, we got voter apathy and they keep sending the same people back there and they're not representing us. So we're going to force it on them. So they forced it. Well, 2007, Representative Landry and I ran for the House because there was a mass exodus of House members. Because if you go 12 years from 1995, 12 years later was 2007, and all these House members were turned out. And they left. Some of them went to the Senate, ran for the Senate. So we got elected, and so that's why Representative Landry said, here I am now termed out. Well, I spent 4 years in the House, and then the senator from Lafayette was termed out. So I ran for the Senate. So I have, if I get elected in October, I'll have one more term, then I'm termed out of the Senate. But I want to give you a perspective on that. This year, well, this term, since she and I got elected in 15, 19 of the 105 House members have left office. They took office, we all took office in January of 16. They left office to go do something else. One became the state treasurer, John Schroeder. One went to Congress, Mike Johnson from Shreveport, Bossier. 2 of them became state senators because we lost only 2 state senators in the last 4 years. Ed Price and Bob Hinskins, who just recently became a state senator. 2 became parish presidents, Major Tebow, who I mentioned earlier in Point Capete, and Kenny Havard in, is it West Feliciana?
I think,
Yeah,
West Feliciana.
West Feliciana. 3 of them left to become a mayor, Mike Danahay in Sulphur, Greg Cromer in Slidell, and Jeff Hall in Alexandria. 2 were elected judges, Marcus Hunter up in Monroe and Chris Hazel in Alexandria. 1 became a sheriff, Joe LaPinto, Jefferson Parish. He had resigned to go to work as in the sheriff's office. 2 became city council members, Helena Moreno in New Orleans and Tom Wilmot in Kenner. 3 left for jobs in the administration. Jack Montese from Scott, he left his state representative to go be the Secretary of Wildlife and Fisheries. Gene Reynolds, he left to go work in the Farm Service. Oh, that's right, in Wildlife and Fisheries. And then Rob Shadowin.
Maybe Robin's.
An attorney from Ruston, he left to go work in the administration. And 2 resigned. Chris Broadwater, who was a bright guy that he was a sole proprietor lawyer, and he said, I just can't do this anymore. I'm losing too much money. I got 3 daughters or 4 daughters. And they were young. He said, I got to go home and it's taken up far too much time, and I love the public. And he was a great public servant. When I tell you, just one of the really shining stars, and he resigned because he just couldn't make ends meet. And Brian Adams left as well, resigned. Then you add to that, 35 other members are just like Representative Landry, and they're going to term out at the end of this. So they're going to have 54 members out of 105 that will not be there, that were there in 2016, but in 2020 won't be there. So you're losing 50% plus of any experience you had. And the experience that's coming back, many of them have been there 4 years, and the rest 8. That's the maximum. Because there are no senators who went back to the House. There was one, and he came with us in 07, and then he didn't run again after that. He resigned and left. So there's also one more thing I'm going to add. The clerk of the House, that's the person who stands at the podium and the speaker's above him, if you've ever been there, and he reads the bills in and moves the process along and says, okay, we're going to open the machines and vote. He says, open the machines. Mr. Clerk opens the machines. This guy is just a lawyer who runs the process. He makes sure the bills move to the next position. 35 years he's been the clerk of the House. Prior to that, he was the assistant clerk. So we're probably losing on the House side 40-something years of experience of running the House. And he's gone. Now I'm going to talk about the Senate now. Okay, so on the Senate side, we lost 1 state senator who resigned, and as I mentioned, Ed Price took his spot. And then Jonathan Perry, the state senator from Favelia Parish, he had a part of Lafayette up here. Bob Hinskins, he had the Ridge and a little bit of Scott area, and he had Church Point and all that area. He just got elected to the Third Circuit Court of Appeals in Lake Charles, and so he's now a circuit court judge. And so Bob Hinskins was in the House. He just ran and won his seat for Senate. So we've had 2. But we're going to lose 16 members of the Senate out of 39 to term limits. So basically, 18 of the 39 members of the Senate are going to be brand new, 1 year from now. So that leaves us with 21 that will have had some experience. Now we're going to get some House members that will run for the Senate. They'll have had legislative experience. But I don't worry, it's just part of the process. The House will have so little experience over there when the new elections go combined with both the clerk and it's going to be an interesting learning curve for them. So the questions that I'm going to ask you to ponder: how many legislators that can run for re-election will just choose not to? I'm talking about the ones who could come back. And I think you could ask Representative Landry, all the special sessions we've had, the people that have to earn a living, it's a part-time job, but it's pretty full-time at times, and you have to raise your family. It's almost gotten to the point where you have to be independently wealthy, work for yourself, or be retired to serve in the legislature. And somebody like Representative Landry, I witnessed her raise her boys and literally almost go broke. She's a lawyer by trade, but she was spending so much time, it was like she couldn't make a living as a single mom. And I feel for people that don't have the luxury. I happen to have the luxury of working in a family business, and people can cover for me when I'm gone. Now, I got a job to do, and I get back, and I go early in the mornings and come back after the legislative session. But it's difficult. It's difficult. Okay, the next question. What will happen in the next term? What are the issues in the next term? And I'm telling you, the most important issue we're going to face every 10 years is redistricting. So the people who get elected next term will redraw every congressional district, every Bessie district, every legislative district, every public service commission district. Do we draw the judges too? Every judge's district? Yeah, of course. Huey Long got shot over a judge's district. That's my little part of Louisiana history right there. So he gerrymandered the judge in Opelousas out of his own district, and his daughter's husband was upset about it. So that's another story. Will we get an extra congressional seat? Will we have picked up population such after the census that we get another congressional seat? We have, we've lost a number. We used to have 9, then we went to 8, then we went to 7, now we're at 6. So that just means other states are growing faster and we're kind of maintaining. And then will Governor Edwards be elected to a second term, or will there be a new governor? It's going to be a statewide ballot. You know that every statewide elected official, every legislator is going to be on the ballot. So that's some things to ponder. And I'm going to say this is what I like to say at the end of my talks, to give you a little takeaway. So people always ask me, what can I do? Number one, the public policies that we make or that we change in the political processes are ideas, generally speaking, that are formulated by people no different than you. Ray Green is a perfect example. He comes to you're brilliant. Comes to our office with an idea and says, can you put it in the form of a bill and let's go debate it. It's a public policy. That's all we do is talk public policy. So I'm going to ask you, what business are you in?
No business.
What did you do?
Welding.
You weld. Okay, I know nothing about welding. But we pass public policy that deal with welders. We pass public policy that probably deals with the licensure, that deals with the formation they have to have education. I don't know anything about it. But I bet you could tell me a lot in 30 minutes that I could relate to the bill and say, I understand a little bit about that. So, second thing I would say is that very few legislators understand what you do for a living. I know what I do, but I don't work in your occupation, and I don't live in your shoes. So, be a resource. That's the first and most important thing. Be a resource to them. So how do you do that? How do you even know what's coming up? First of all, you come to meetings like this. But secondly, Representative Landry and myself, we have district offices, and I'm telling you, we have legislative assistants that would love to do anything you need. Our office is your office. You pick up the phone and call and say, what are the issues in education? She can give you a list of all of them. Or send you to the website and show you how. Learn about the political process, because here's the most important thing. Somebody asked about lobbyists earlier. And they said something about how do we overcome, how can we fight against the lobbyists? And Representative Landry said it very eloquently, but I'm going to tell you in a simple way. When I sit at that committee dais, whether I'm at transportation or commerce or the retirement committee, when a constituent walks in and in the committee room, they have every right to grab a card and come be a witness. The lobbyist has already told me this is what side I'm on. So they're already given me their, I'm with Exxon, he's with Shell. I like the bill, he doesn't like the bill. Here's why I don't like it. Exxon doesn't believe it's good because it is. His lobbyists show up and say, I'm with Shell, we like it because it is. They don't put a gun to my head to vote, they just try to give me information. When a plumbers have a bill, they have a lobbyist. Because if you're plumbing, you don't have time to go up there. But I will listen to the lobbyist, he'll explain the bill, why he thinks it's good or bad. But if 3 plumbers from my district walk in to testify, that's the strongest lobby you can ever have. Because I got to get out of that seat and go talk to them after it's over with. And they vote. And their families vote. And their friends vote. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to vote every time with them just because they show up, but it means I'm going to listen more intently to my constituent who's in that committee, because it means something. So when a bill gets introduced, whether it's a Senate bill or House bill, it gets sent to a committee of jurisdiction. So if it's a transportation bill on the Senate side, it's going to come to my committee. We're going to have a hearing, and it's going to be full of testimony. The public's going to come in and speak. After that, it's going to go to the floor of the Senate. We're going to vote on it, all 39 senators, not just the ones in my committee, but all 39 are going to get to weigh in on it. If it passes the Senate, and I use this example, if somebody came and said, I think we ought to make all stop signs green, and it got in the committee, and for some reason it got out of that committee that stop signs should be green, and it went to the floor of the Senate, you could still come to the Senate floor and say, I need to speak to Senator Cortez. I don't like this bill. But I can't go talk about it, but you're my senator, would you mind? But even if it got out of the Senate, it still has to go to the House and be sent to the Committee of Jurisdiction, the House Transportation Committee, and you could go testify in the House Transportation and say, I think they should stay red. And then they might say, well, you know what? Somewhere between green and red, let's make them yellow. And they could go to the House floor, and those 18 people on House Transportation could have passed it out 9-8, or 9-10, and then it could get to the House floor, and you could still go there and say, I want to talk to my House member, and send him a note, please vote against this bill. And it could die, or it could get an amendment, and then amendment could change it back to red. But that's the process. And if you don't know the process, you don't know how to participate. It's kind of like not knowing how to play the games on the playground when you're a kid. Once you learn them, then you want to participate. So I always say, if you have time and if you have an interest, get in the game. Participate. Because you know what's easy to do? Complain. Not know what's going on and complain. And I see Tom over there. Tom's been to the legislature and he's gotten in the game. And I appreciate so much when people come to the Capitol. I'm a historian. I love to give you a tour of the Capitol. We'll go meet the governor. I'll bring you up there. You may not like the governor, but you can meet him and see his office, because it was the old Supreme Court library at one time. But anyway, that's my takeaway. Learn the process. Enjoy getting in the game, and it's not personal. It's public policy. That's all it is. So I don't think stop signs should be green, by the way. So at this point, I'm happy to take any questions. I know it's been long, and I apologize.
If there's any questions, it's the time to come up, if you will.
Well, sir, since you are on the Transportation Committee, I have an issue with the fact that people that are disabled on full disability aren't afforded a public transportation bus pass for free. And I would like to see, and I'm not sure, I listened to your civics course right there, and I do go to the Capitol. I am an advocate for mental illness, number one.
All right, great.
And in fact have just formed a nonprofit to start a clubhouse, which will be a chapter of an international program here in Lafayette for mental illness, for adults living with mental illness. Obviously, this is a passion of mine because I have an adult son that suffers from mental illness. And while he lived in Miami, he went and picked up a monthly bus pass, and he could go all over Miami and get to where he needed to be. However, he lives in Lafayette now, and he picks
then
up
Miami
his
doesn't work
little,
over here.
no, it doesn't work over here, and he can't get one, and he lives on $750 a month in his own home with his own utilities and all that good kind of stuff. So he picks up his little cell phone that he's getting for free, which I'm grateful for because I'd probably have to pay for that too, and calls mom and says, hey mom, take me to the doctor, take me to the store, take me here. He could learn how to get there if he could get a bus pass.
Good question. Okay,
Thank you.
so if I'm sure I understand the question, it's can there be a state law passed that would give everybody free transport, not everybody, but certain people, free transportation on public transit?
Yes.
Okay, so,
On buses.
disability. So, the public transportation in each of the municipalities or the ones that provide it, the funding is solely provided by the local municipality. So one of the things that we get accused of at the state level is what we call state mandates. We accuse the federal government of doing it, saying, you got to do this, but we ain't paying you to do it. So go do it on your nickel. Well, if I told the Lafayette Consolidated Government, if we passed that bill and said, you have to give these people free transit, they would call us and say, how are you paying for it? And say, well, we're not. We big brother. We telling you what to do. And they'd say, the point is, you're speaking to the state.
Yeah.
And really, that 9-member panel that Mr. Green knows so well, they can change that with 5-4 vote. If they want to do it, and that's why it's called COLT, City of Lafayette Transit, so it's owned by the City of Lafayette. If you've ever been to Atlanta, it's called MARTA, Metro Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority. It's run by Atlanta. So the states generally don't have public transportation. In rare cases they do, but that's what I would say is that, you know, we would not want to be, I don't like state mandates. I think that we should let it be done.
You could.
We can pass a resolution.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Pass a resolution.
We'll pass a resolution.
And put a bug in somebody's ear. I'm
Therefore,
sure
be
you
it
know.
resolved, the legislature of the state of Louisiana does hereby request that you give due consideration to this.
There you go.
Representative Landry and I'll co-author that.
Thank you.
Got 3 quick questions, if I may. Number 1, what is your opinion, or are you for or against the suggestion that I made that all legislatures have to pass the same quiz on the Constitution? You know the rest of it.
I'm for it. The problem you're going to have
Yeah.
is that the requirements and credentials to run are in the Constitution for the state of Louisiana, and there's also some federal law that dictates certain things. So unless we're willing to change the Constitution of the state of Louisiana and the Constitution of the United States, we probably are going to have a problem mandating that.
We can
But
do that.
I'm for
We
it.
can do that.
I'm the one who passed the deal and gave you the app that said you can go learn all these things that an immigrant would have to pass to get naturalized.
Right,
So,
okay. Yes, 2 more questions, yes or no. Representative Bishop and I are working on another bill for Project Armchair.
Project Armchair.
Are you and...
Okay,
Let's
so
do
Project
a
Armchair,
report.
just so you all know, it's Ray's passion. He's disabled. It says it's embarrassing for him to not be able to get out of a chair. Now, he doesn't limit it to himself. Pregnant women, I mean, we've had this
Do you
discussion.
have any idea, quick, do you have any idea how many disabled people we have in Louisiana, plus disabled veterans, plus senior citizens, plus expectant mothers? Question, when you were expecting, did you have any difficulty getting out of the chair with no arms in it?
Sometimes.
That proves my point. We have over 1 million people in Louisiana that need those darn armchairs.
So,
Are you for
my
it?
answer,
Will you work with?
I worked on the first one, which was in public. I mean, Yeah, public spaces, that 5% of this.
For
chair-
government
for
buildings.
government buildings. So
Down the
we
line
didn't
for
mandate it on
government.
somebody else, we put it on us. So this is where I differ with you, Ray. What you want me to do is tell every restaurant in Lafayette, the owners, go buy you some armchairs because these don't work.
5%.
5%.
5%.
I'm not gonna argue with you over the percentage. We might go 20% for it, so we're negotiating. But what I suggested, as you recall, was I think that people will vote with their pocketbook. And if there's not a chair at that restaurant for you, you're not gonna go there anymore. And I said what we should do is create Project Armchair, and if you are a restaurant that has them, you get a placard to put in your window, and you now invite those people to come and enjoy their food.
I got them, but people won't put them up. Second question, real quick. Do lobbyists donate to politicians?
Yes.
Thank you.
So do private
So do
sector
private
people.
citizens.
But I can assure you that at the end of the day, I could not, and I don't want to speak for Representative Landry, I could not have been elected because when I ran, I didn't get a lobbyist donation. I was unknown to, I had been serving on the Recreation and Parks Commission. They didn't care about the Recreation and Parks Commission. But I didn't get a single lobbyist donation when I ran in '07. And yes, subsequent to then, after that I did get some. But I will tell you here's the purpose of those donations. Many of them have, like if I'm going to use the welders again, if they have an association, each of their members gives money to what they call a PAC, a Political Action Committee. And what they want as a collective group, whether it's welders or plumbers or teachers, they all have it, they want to have access that you will visit with them. And so they say, I have a contribution, can we visit? I'm going to give you an example. Today at 11:30 I had a meeting with Blue Cross Blue Shield. They brought me a political contribution. I sat across from them and they said, we have 3 issues coming up in this session and we'd like to discuss them with you. Now, I'm telling you, and I mean this sincerely, I would have met with them whether they brought a contribution or not. I didn't know until they got there that they had a contribution for me. But that's part of what they do, is their job. If, again, I go back to the welders, if they had a union and they had a certain lobbyist, they want him to be able to get in to see me and give me their side of the story. I'm telling you, you don't have to give me money, but it's welcome. But you know I've taken meetings with you.
I know. But you can play the lobbyists can play havoc. For example, the House passed the resolution supporting Project Armchair. We went to Baton Rouge with Representative Bishop, and 2 lobbyists caused all kind of heck. On the basis of those 2 darn lobbyists speaking for the Louisiana Restaurant Association, shut down the whole thing. Just because of 2 lobbyists, and they did make some donations. So that's the end of that game. But we're not giving up yet.
Nope, don't give up.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Tom?
Oh, no.
Senor Tom.
Just say about 20 minutes. I'm just kidding. I've been there. Good to see you. I would like to ask y'all about my current favorite issue, monuments. In the House, Representative, let me say, by the way, first of all, I want to agree with what you said about the time that y'all have given. As a part, I've been a Republican Party official for decades, and I appreciate the effort that y'all have both made in giving time. And as a lawyer, I know you don't make a living unless you're in your office, so the time that you made was very well taken. Anyway, on the issue of monuments, there was a bill by Representative Carmody calling for the preservation, essentially, of all monuments for veterans. They got 2/3 of those president voting. It was then sent by President Landry to Senate Governmental Affairs Committee, which is called the Kill Committee. That's where the President of the Senate sends a bill that he or the governor wants to kill. And of course, the governor...
Just one of the committees that he sent it to.
Huh?
That's just one of the committees. There's another one.
They can all kill stuff, huh? But it's supposed, by the rules of the Senate, it's supposed to go to the Education Committee. So he intentionally violated his own rules and sent it to the wrong committee. We have it summarily killed, and the chairman of that committee is the chairman of the Democratic Party. But, you know, it's not just it's not a partisan issue, but you know, and I want to tell both of you, the Republican Party has endorsed monuments 3 times. First of all, they endorsed Carmody's bill to protect veteran monuments, and said that, passed a resolution that it should go to the floor of the Senate, okay? And I know that the President's office knew about it because I called over there, and he didn't do it, okay? I mean, so the President of the Senate may face censure by the Republican Party because he's a Republican official. You know, I know it's his last year, but, you know, we'll see if he listens to any other Senate call. But furthermore, they also passed resolutions. I supported a constitutional amendment because I feel that if it went to the public and debated, it's a controversial issue. It goes to the public and debated by the public and by the press. I have a lot of press contacts. I come from an old press family. I wanted it to be debated in the press and among the public. And so the Republican State Central Committee urged that, did a resolution saying that my bill should be given due consideration. The Senator Beth Mizell had a bill, either for a commission or a local vote, I forgot the term. All 3 great bills. Okay, none of them went anywhere. You know, Beth got killed in the Senate. We deferred to Carmody's bill, and, you know, I strongly supported Carmody's bill. Y'all see, what do y'all see happening this year? I haven't spoken to Tom Carmody, but will soon.
Okay, so just to address and give you a little bit of background, so Tom was talking about a monument bill. So you recall the monuments being removed in New Orleans.
Yes.
So that was a hot button issue. We just referred to the Senate Governmental Affairs Committee. The Senate Governmental Affairs Committee on the Senate side is made up of 9 members. Yeah, 9 members. 4 of them are from the New Orleans area. They're African Americans from the New Orleans area. So it was a hot button issue. It got sent to that committee, and you were there. It didn't have a chance in hell of getting out of that committee. It died there. The way the jurisdiction works is we are a bicameral legislature, meaning Representative Landry and I are very good friends. We go visit in the Capitol quite a bit. We talk about issues quite a bit, but I never vote on any House issues, and she never votes on any Senate issues. So the House sending a resolution to the Senate is like the Hatfields telling the McCoys that they got to eat supper at a certain time during the day. It's like Chevron telling Shell how to run their business. It's the reason, the beauty of the bicameral is the fact that we don't have to listen to each other, that we get a second bite at the apple. We get to look at it from a different perspective, because if we all agreed to everything and if we listened to the House all the time, we just say rubber stamp, go back. And they would say rubber stamp, come back.
Much better body if you listen to the House all the time.
Right. And so the House has this opinion that they're always right.
We are.
And so anyway, that was what the issue is. And I will say that in politics, much like life, timing is everything. And after this next election cycle, you're going to have a new Senate president, you're going to have a whole new Senate, and you're going to have all different committee makeups. So timing is everything.
Is an area running for the House next?
I heard today, categorically no, which means maybe.
I want to add one more thing. One follow-up. The constitutional amendment originated as a resolution of the attack upon chapter of the Sons of the American Revolution, which has members from 7 or 8 parishes around here. It's core of Acadiana. So it's an Acadiana concept, okay? And we have almost unanimous support except for one member, okay?
And I'll address that.
Okay, and it's a free speech issue. The idea that, you know, for instance, the people who build monuments to anyone, and everyone ought to be able to have monuments in the public square honoring different groups of the population. The inscriptions on those monuments are a matter of speech, okay? It's a free speech matter, denial of free speech, okay? The people that have destroyed monuments in history have been the great dictators of history. Adolf Hitler, Benito Mussolini, those kind of people. It's a horrible suppression of free speech. It's an attempt to intimidate one group of the population. You know, and my interest was through the Sons of the American Revolution were created by federal law, by the Congress, and it says we must erect and therefore maintain statues to compatriots before the Revolution. And there are people who want to take down George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, for their own political reasons, which I disagree with vehemently, okay? Civil War, and, you know, Carpenter's bill, he faced a lot of opposition. To protect Confederate monuments. Our position is much broader than that. All Confederate monuments, all Union monuments, anyone who fought in the Revolution, anyone who fought in any war of the United States. Okay, if you go to war, people have physical and mental and psychological injury. They pay that price. You should never say they cannot be honored in the public square, because the present politics and the present revisionary thought is that they fought for the wrong reasons. People don't fight for politics. They fight because they're in the army, or they went to a service academy, or they're drafted. Okay, and they should be honored in the public square. My Angie's grandfather, great-great-grandfather, was two of us Republicans in the Civil War. You know, over my dead body, would they say we cannot honor those men because of what side they fought on. But again, it's all war.
Yeah.
You know.
So to go back, Ray brought it up earlier, resolutions, you know, we pass resolutions, and many times if there's no objection, they don't even get a vote. So is there any objection to passing the resolution 1, 2, 3? Without objection, that's adopted. So we adopt resolutions. Statutes, which are laws, require majority vote of both houses and the signature of the governor. So a constitutional amendment, like Tom was talking about, would have required 2/3 vote of the House, 2/3 vote of the Senate, and the politics is it doesn't go to the governor, it goes to the people. The governor cannot veto a constitutional amendment, it has to go to the people. So part of the process, and again, I get bogged down in process because I was a teacher and I wanted everybody to know. Part of the process was Tom was saying if we pass it, it's going to go to the governor's desk, he's going to veto it anyway, so let's send it straight to the people. The problem with that was you didn't have 2/3 vote in both houses to get it to the people. Timing is everything. You'll have a new group of legislators and maybe a new governor, maybe not.
But you have 2/3 of those president voting in the House, you know.
But it's 2/3 elected, it's not 2/3.
The word is, Senator, that Senator Lario listens to you. So you're going to be my leader.
Let's get some witnesses to that.
Committee,
Listen, I want to say
a House committee chairman like you.
Thank you again, Tom. Thank you all for letting me come talk. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank y'all again. I just wanted to say one thing. One of the people who is running for my seat is here tonight, Mr. Jim Doré. So y'all might want to make an effort to meet him and talk to him, as he's already announced that he's running for my
I'm not sure after this grilling, I'm not sure. I may change my mind.
Who else is definitely running for the seat?
Jonathan Guido.
Yeah, Jonathan Guido,
Rance.
Jim Doré, and Gus
Gus
Rance
Rance
are the three that have announced
How
so
about
far.
Mr. Trahan? Is he running?
He hasn't announced.
Is he in that district?
I don't know where he
He
lives
he's
now.
not, he hadn't announced.
What's his name? Is it not Trahan? He
Talking
ran,
about
he ran,
Donald
but,
Trump?
Don, the
Don
former
Trump?
state representative?
yeah,
The former one, the one I ran against?
yeah.
I haven't heard that he's running.
Well, he said, you know what, I don't know this.
Nancy, I think you and Paige have done a wonderful job.
Thank
Never
you.
mind
Thank
what
you.
everybody else says.
Thank y'all both for your
Thank
long
y'all.
service. I
Thank
know
y'all.
it takes an awful lot of
Thanks a
time.
lot, that was awesome.
Ed, would you do me a favor and come up
Want to hear it again?
and let everybody know how, in other words, you pass this on and what day it'll be ready. It's usually 3 or 4 days, I know.
Yeah.
But YouTube, he'll explain it to you in a second, how you can do it.
Yeah, if you want to see the video of this particular meeting, we put it on YouTube. It'll probably be about this coming Saturday by the time I get it on. I do a little bit of processing with it, mess around with it. But to get to it, you go to, on your internet browser, you go to youtube.com. At the top of the first page of YouTube, there'll be a search bar. And you put in CCGG space and Nancy Landry or Paige Cortez. It'll come up. That's it.
The audio might not be very good since we didn't have a microphone.
No, you got it. I was
You did?
listening to you.
Okay.
It was catching your voice.
Okay, good.
Assuming the voice is good enough.
Well, thank y'all.
Thank you, Ed. A round of applause, if you will, for these people. In 2 weeks, we're having,
Justin Centani on April the 1st.
all right, that's first of the month,
Yes,
okay?
sir.
That's education, you guys, and he's the official for the 6th district, which will be part of 6th district. And he does a great job, and he's really involved in education. So If you have children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren out there, you need to be out encouraging these people to continue to march because they're doing a good job. Thank you all very much and come back and see us.